Hello friends and family, welcome to another exciting episode of RenkLife. Today, as you notice, I'm in my kitchen. I'm going to be doing another cooking video because, well, we're quarantined and there's not really much else to do. So today I'm going to be making what used to be my favorite thing to eat in the entire world before I went vegan, but I have now developed a non-dairy, non-meat version of it. It is, in case you read the title, Biscuits and Gravy. I'm going to be making the gravy from scratch, I'm going to be making the biscuits from scratch, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the milk. Now you can use store-bought milk, and I highly recommend that you get an oat milk. My favorite brand is Oatmeal. It is the most neutral tasting of all the milk, so when you're adding it to a dish like this that's cream-based, you want a very neutral tasting milk. I've used soy milk, I've used rice milk, almond milk, cashew milk, coconut milk, every type of milk you can think, and they all seem to add a little bit of a flavor. So I found that oat milk is the most neutral, works really well for a recipe like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make my own because I haven't been to the store this week to buy it, but either way that you want to do it is fine. So I've already got a cup of rolled oats in the blender and 4 cups of water. I'm using rolled oats. You can use quick oats, you can use old-fashioned oats, you can use any type of oats that you want. They all work just as well. And I'm going to go ahead and blend it on high speed for about 3 to 4 minutes until it is nice blended up and there's no more large chunks, and then we're going to run it through the filter. If you have a high-speed blender like a Vitamix, it would take probably half that time. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, that should be good. Okay, so now that the milk is blended, I'm going to go ahead and filter it through this sleeve, get most of the big chunks out. Remember, this doesn't have to be perfect. We just want it to do the job. You can kind of squeeze it. Don't worry, my hands have been washed many times today. I want to get all that liquid out of here. Now we are going to go ahead and filter it a second time, this time using a much finer screen. What I'm going to be using is actually a piece of a t-shirt that has been cut up. It has been washed numerous times. The reason that I'm doing that is because that's what I had. And part of what I want to emphasize in my channel is that you don't need to be rich in order to eat dairy-free and meat-free. You can use whatever you have around, and it ends up being relatively cheap. I mean, this cup of oats, that whole thing of oats was less than $4, and I'm only using a cup. So just think how much milk we can get out of that for not very much money at all. And if you don't have to buy specialized equipment, I bet every one of you has a blender at home and an old t-shirt that you can cut up, and that's all you need to make this oat milk. So I'll do a little at a time, and just like before, kind of squeeze it, trying to make as little of a mess as possible. You will need to rinse out the fabric a few times because it will get clogged up with the little pieces of oat. Alright, so here we go. That's the milk. Just as simple as blended up oats and water. Take a look at that color, that consistency. To me, that looks more like milk than most of the ones that you buy in the store, and it's going to work really well for this recipe. So let's continue on. Alright, so now that we got the milk done, we're going to go ahead and get started with the biscuits. I'm not going to put a lot of time into showing you how to make biscuits because honestly, these are just normal, traditional biscuits. I got this recipe out of an old Betty Crocker cookbook, so any biscuits you want to use are most of the time already vegan, already dairy-free, unless you're going for like the buttermilk biscuits or using butter. But the basic ingredients for biscuits is just a basic recipe. One thing I will say is that this recipe is 100% gluten-free except for these biscuits. I'm going to add flour to these biscuits, make them standard, but there's nothing in the gravy, nothing in the milk that would make this not gluten-free. So if you are gluten-free and you want to avoid gluten, just make your own recipe for biscuits and this gravy will go over it just perfect. Alright, so I've got flour, sugar, salt, baking powder, and cream of tartar added to this bowl. Obviously mix up the dry ingredients. And then I'm using Crisco shortening. Please don't lecture me on the palm kernel oil and how it's killing the elephants. I am aware of that, and I do my best to avoid it, but this is what I had on hand, so this is what I'm going to use. Alright, so now that the biscuits are in the oven, we're going to go ahead and get started on the sausage for the sausage gravy. I'm going to go ahead and get my pan warming up. This is what I'm using for the main part of the gravy. It is a textured vegetable protein. It is made completely out of soy, and it is easy to find in just about every grocery store that I go to. Just go to the Hispanic food section and you'll find this. It's like $2 for this whole bag. We're only going to be using about half of it. You can use a standard TVP, but the stuff I like about this is it's larger chunks, so it's more like what you'd expect in a sausage gravy. And then we're going to add just enough water to cover the pieces. We don't want too much, but we don't want not enough either. Now I'm going to add some flavoring, so we're going to go ahead and add some soy sauce. Now you remember I said that this gravy is gluten-free. Certain brands of soy sauce are gluten-free. You just have to check. Lots of pepper. A nice healthy scoop of coconut oil. I have found that refined coconut oil has the most similar mouthfeel to animal fat. So once that cooks up and melts, it'll be very similar. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some sage. About that much. And then I've got one more secret ingredient that is very optional, but I find that it is important. And that is blue food coloring. We want 1 drop. We don't want blue sausage, but we do want it to be a little bit gray. And I found just 1 drop of the blue food coloring. Takes a little bit of that brown out and makes it more of a gray sausagey color versus more of a brown hamburgery color. Now if you watched my last video where I made the beefless jerky, you'll notice that this is a very similar process. What we're doing is we're just putting it in water, boiling the water, and then cooking it until all of that water is gone. That way all of the flavor that's in the water is going to get soaked in to those dry soy pieces. Alright, so it is now done. My general rule of thumb to know when it's done is when it starts sticking to the pan. And it's just barely starting to stick to the pan, so that means enough of the water is dried up that it's actually steamed out as much as it can. So we're going to put the sausage to the side. And then using that same pan, we're going to go ahead and start the gravy part of the gravy. So first we're going to make a roux. I'm going to go ahead and use some more coconut oil. So we are making our roux, which is simply oil and flour. Make sure all those chunks of flour are gone, and you want this to be just a little bit brown, but not too brown. And now we're going to add that oat milk that we made earlier. Keeping the burner on a pretty decent heat, a medium high. We're going to be then cooking this until it thickens up. While it does that, it's already getting pretty thick. One thing to note is if you are making your own oat milk like I did, that will actually thicken up a little bit as it cooks. So you can add just a little bit less flour. If you buy the store-bought oat milk, that does not thicken up as it cooks. Alright, turn the burner down. Now we're going to give this a taste, see if it needs more salt or pepper. A little bit more salt. And why not some more pepper? This is a country gravy, so it's going to be pretty peppery. Perfect. Add the sausage back to it. Give that a quick stir. Probably shouldn't use the whisk. And with that, essentially we are done. Let's get this plated up. Alright, let's take a look at this. Tell me that does not make your mouth water, because mine is watering like crazy right now. I cannot wait to eat this. So there you have it. Fairly simple, fairly cheap to make. No meat, no dairy, no eggs. Just simple, plain biscuits and country gravy. So there you go, RenkLife's famous biscuits and gravy. I kind of invented this recipe myself because I used to cook biscuits and gravy all the time, so I just figured out how to make it dairy-free, meat-free, butter-free, everything-free, so that it's just good old-fashioned, good-tasting biscuits and gravy. So for now, that is all I have. Until next time, signing out.